The morning was wrapped in a fine drizzle, the kind that clings to your coat and curls your hair just enough to ruin all effort. Angelica darted through the crowd at Paddington Station, her boots tapping sharply against the wet stone floor. She was late again. The station was a blur of umbrellas, echoing announcements, and the bitter scent of cheap coffee wafting from the corner cafe. Trains came and went like waves, each one swallowing passengers whole and leaving behind nothing but the echo of rolling wheels. Angelica's breath formed little clouds in the air as she ran toward platform 6, clutching her handbag to her chest. But just as she reached the steps, the loud whistle cut through the air. The train doors closed with a mechanical sigh, and the long silver body of the carriage began to move, slow at first, and then faster, until it was gone. She stood there panting, watching her chance disappear into the distance. "Brilliant," she muttered under her breath, brushing her wet hair away from her face. "Absolutely brilliant." She dropped down onto the nearest bench, sighing heavily. Her husband Peter's clinic appointment had been set for 9:30. The doctor had warned them that morning. His condition was fragile, and any stress or delay in treatment could be risky. And here she was, sitting at a train station late, soaked and miserable. She leaned back against the cold metal bench and let her eyes wander across the busy platform. People passed her in waves, men in suits, mothers with prams, teenagers with headphones who didn't seem to notice the world at all. There was a rhythm to it all, a kind of city dance that made her feel both small and invisible. Then, just off to her right, she noticed something unusual. A small wooden stall sat in the corner near the vending machines, draped in a faded purple cloth. Behind it, an old woman sat quietly, her thin hands arranging tiny trinkets on display, pins, brooches, little charms made of glass and metal. The woman's face was full of lines, but her eyes, they were sharp and alive, a deep grey that seemed to look right through the noise around her. Angelica hesitated, but found herself walking toward the stall. Maybe it was the stillness of the woman, or maybe it was just curiosity, anything to distract her from the frustration bubbling inside. "Morning," Angelica said softly. The woman looked up, a small, knowing smile tugging at her lips. "Missed your train, did you?" she asked, her voice calm, but oddly certain, as if she had been watching all along. Angelica gave a short, embarrassed laugh. "That obvious, huh?" The old woman chuckled quietly. "Trains don't wait for anyone, dear. But sometimes the ones we miss are the ones that save us." Angelica frowned a little, unsure what to make of that. "Well, I wouldn't call this saving. My husband's at the clinic waiting for me. He's been sick for weeks and She stopped herself. She didn't even know why she was explaining her life to a stranger. The woman nodded slowly, reaching into a small wooden box beside her. She pulled out a pin shaped like a heart, silver and smooth, with a tiny crack running through its center. "Here," she said, placing it gently on the table. "It's not much, but it might help." Angelica raised an eyebrow. "Help? You mean like a good luck charm?" "Not luck," the woman replied, her eyes locking onto Angelica's. "Clarity. For those who are too close to the storm to see what's really happening." Angelica smiled politely. "That sounds rather poetic, but I don't think a pin's going to fix my day." "Maybe not," the woman said, her tone soft but firm. "Still wear it, and listen carefully to what the world is trying to tell you." Angelica hesitated, but there was something in the woman's gaze, something unsettling, something that felt almost protective. She reached into her purse and pulled out a few coins, handing them over. "All right," she said, forcing a smile. "You win. I'll take the magic pin." The woman handed it to her carefully, as though it was something fragile and sacred. As Angelica pinned it to her coat, the old woman's expression changed. Her smile faded, replaced by a strange seriousness. "Go home," she said quietly. Angelica blinked. "Home? I can't. My husband's appointment—" "Not the clinic," the woman interrupted, her voice dropping low. "Home, now, before it's too late." Angelica stared at her, startled by the sudden intensity in her tone. "What are you talking about?" "Too late for what?" The woman's eyes softened again, but she said nothing more. She simply looked away, her fingers returning to the trinkets as if the conversation had never happened. Angelica tried to laugh it off, but a chill had crept into her chest. "Right, okay," she said awkwardly. "Thanks for the pin." The woman didn't reply. Angelica turned to leave, glancing back once. The old woman was still there, watching the crowd with that same distant calm, the purple cloth fluttering slightly from the passing trains. For a moment, Angelica thought she saw the silver heart on her coat glint in the light, catching her eye. She touched it absently, a small shiver running through her fingers. Something about the moment felt strange, unreal even. The kind of moment you remember later and think, that's when everything changed. As the next train rolled in, its wheels screeching softly against the wet tracks, Angelica took a deep breath. Maybe she'd just go home first, check on Peter, and then get him to the clinic herself. It would only take a little longer, and yet, as she stepped onto the platform and the wind from the arriving train brushed her face, a strange thought settled in her chest, a whisper she couldn't quite place, like the echo of the woman's voice, "Before it's too late." She clutched the pin again, its cold metal pressing against her fingers. And for the first time that morning, she didn't feel frustrated anymore. She felt uneasy. She didn't know it yet, but missing that train wasn't a mistake. It was the beginning of everything that was about to unfold. The train ride back to Surrey felt longer than usual, though it was only 40 minutes. Angelica sat by the window, the pin on her coat catching the soft morning light. She couldn't shake the feeling the old woman's words had left behind. Go home before it's too late. It sounded absurd, almost like something out of a film. And yet the more she thought about it, the more it gnawed at her chest. Her husband Peter had been unwell for weeks. The doctor said his heart was weak, but the way he avoided her eyes lately, the way he pulled away whenever she tried to talk, it wasn't just illness. It was something else. They'd been married 12 years, and she knew him better than anyone, or at least she used to. Lately, he had become quiet, secretive, always locking his phone, spending hours working from home in his study. Angelica pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window. Maybe the old woman had seen something in her face, some sign of fear or doubt. People like that, they could read things. Or maybe it was all just coincidence. Still, something in her gut told her she needed to listen. When she finally reached home, the sky had cleared. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that shimmered like silver coins across the street. Their little brick house sat at the end of a quiet lane, with its ivy-covered walls and white fence she had painted herself last summer. Everything looked peaceful, ordinary, but as soon as she saw the front door slightly ajar, her stomach twisted. "Peter?" she called softly, pushing the door open. Silence. No music, no TV, not even the faint hum of the kettle. Just the tick-tick-tick of the clock in the hallway. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. The air felt heavy, still carrying the faint smell of Peter's cologne, mixed with the stale scent of tea left too long in the pot. She walked toward the living room, her heels clicking softly against the wooden floor, and then stopped. On the sofa sat an open suitcase, her big one half filled. Her heart skipped. Slowly, she stepped closer. Shirts, trousers, a stack of neatly folded clothes, and tucked between them a brown envelope. She hesitated, her hands trembling slightly, then picked it up. The envelope wasn't sealed. Inside, she found a letter, written in Peter's handwriting. Her name wasn't on it. "Dearest Lucy," the letter began. Angelica's knees nearly gave out. She sank onto the edge of the sofa, the paper shaking between her fingers. "I can't keep living like this. Angelica deserves better, and so do I. You've brought me a kind of peace I haven't felt in years. Once I sort things out, I'll come to you. I promise, Peter." Her eyes blurred. The words twisted and tangled in her head. For a long moment, she couldn't even breathe. She just sat there, listening to the sound of her own heart breaking in quiet, steady beats. Peter, the man she had nursed through sleepless nights, the man whose hands she'd held in hospital rooms, had been planning to leave her. Her vision swam as she stared at the suitcase. How long had he been lying to her? The phone calls in the other room, the sudden business trips, the coldness in his tone, it all made sense now. She stood up suddenly, anger cutting through the shock. "How could you?" she whispered to the empty room, her voice trembling. "After everything I've done?" A faint sound interrupted her, a low groan from upstairs. Angelica froze. For a moment, she thought she had imagined it. Then it came again, weak, desperate. "Peter," she whispered, her voice cracking. She dropped the letter and ran up the stairs, 2 steps at a time. The bedroom door was half open. Inside, Peter lay crumpled near the bed, one hand clutching his chest, the other reaching toward the phone on the floor. His face was pale, drenched in sweat. "Peter!" Angelica gasped, rushing to his side. She knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she grabbed his shoulders. "Peter, can you hear me?" His lips moved, barely forming words. "Angie." "Don't talk," she said, her voice trembling. "Just breathe, okay? I'm calling an ambulance." Her fingers fumbled with her phone as she dialed the number. She gave the address, her voice breaking as she begged them to hurry. The operator's calm tone barely cut through the panic flooding her mind. She dropped the phone and held Peter's hand tightly. His skin was cold. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Just hang on. Please hang on." He tried to speak again, but his voice came out as a whisper, raw and broken. I'm sorry." Angelica felt her throat tighten. "Don't," she said quickly. "Don't say anything now. Save your strength." But he shook his head weakly. "I never meant to hurt you." Her heart cracked in ways words couldn't describe. The letter on the sofa flashed in her mind. The betrayal, the lies. And yet, at that moment, none of it mattered. The man she loved was dying in her arms, and all she wanted was to keep him alive. Within minutes, she heard the faint wail of sirens in the distance. She ran downstairs to unlock the door, then raced back up. Peter's eyes were half closed, his breathing shallow. She kept whispering his name over and over, as if saying it could tether him to life. When the paramedics arrived, they moved quickly, checking his pulse, attaching wires, lifting him onto the stretcher. One of them glanced at her and said softly, "He's lucky you were home." Another 10 minutes, and he didn't finish. Angelica just nodded numb. As they carried Peter out, she caught sight of the silver heart pin glinting on her coat. She touched it, her breath catching in her throat. If she hadn't missed that train, if she hadn't met that old woman, if she hadn't listened to that strange warning, Peter would have died alone, in the silence of their empty house. As the ambulance doors closed, Angelica climbed inside, her hands still clutching the little silver heart. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the pain, she felt a strange sense of fate, like she had been led here for a reason. And she couldn't help but whisper to herself, "Maybe some missed trains are meant to save us." The beeping of machines filled the small hospital room, a slow, steady rhythm that matched the beating of Angelica's heart. She sat beside Peter's bed, his hand resting weakly in hers. The white walls, the faint smell of disinfectant, the tired hum of voices in the corridor. It all felt distant, like she was watching her life from outside herself. Peter stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering open. When he saw her, guilt shadowed his face. "Angelica," he whispered, his voice hoarse and fragile. She looked at him, her eyes swollen from crying, but calm now, too calm. "Don't speak," she said softly. "You need to rest." But Peter shook his head weakly. "I need to say this. I was wrong. I thought I wanted to leave, but when I saw you there calling my name, I realized I'd never stop needing you. I was just scared." Angelica swallowed hard. Her heart still ached from the words in that letter, the betrayal that had cut so deep she could barely breathe. And yet, sitting here, looking at his pale face, she couldn't hate him. Not completely. "People do foolish things when they're scared," she said quietly. "But you almost lost everything." "I almost did too." Tears slipped down Peter's cheeks. "I don't deserve you." Angelica brushed his hand gently. "Maybe not. But we both deserve a second chance. If we can still find love after this, then maybe it's worth fighting for." For a moment neither of them spoke. The silence between them was fragile, but full of something real, truth. The kind that hurts but heals. Days passed, and Peter slowly regained his strength. Angelica stayed with him through it all, every meal, every quiet night, every difficult breath. The nurses admired her patience, but she didn't do it for praise. She did it because, despite everything, love wasn't something you just walk away from. When Peter was finally discharged, the sun was setting over the hospital car park. The sky was brushed with soft pink and gold. Angelica helped him into the car, and for the first time in months, he smiled. A small, tired smile, but real. On the drive home, she reached into her coat pocket and felt the silver heart pin between her fingers. It was cool and smooth, glinting faintly in the fading light. She turned to Peter and said softly, "You know, I met someone at the station that morning. An old woman. She told me to come home before it was too late." Peter frowned. "A fortune-teller?" "Maybe," Angelica said, smiling faintly. "Or maybe just someone who saw what I couldn't." When they reached home, the lights of their little house glowed warm through the windows. It didn't feel broken anymore. It felt like a place that could heal. That night, as Angelica placed the silver heart on her bedside table, she whispered, "Thank you, whoever you were. Sometimes life's detours lead us exactly where we're meant to be. A missed train, a broken heart, a strange encounter. All of it can guide us toward truth, forgiveness, and love. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more soulful English emotional tales and real-life dramas. Share your own story below, because every life has a moment worth telling.